Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with Vert, top laner for Team One. We're just about to go into that final tie-breaking game between Team One and the Direwolves. Vert, in that last match against the Direwolves, you were able to outplay Chippies in the top lane. How did that feel when you got that great outplay?
He committed a mistake and I punished. That's not more than that.
Well, it was great that you punished that. You were able to get a good lead from that as well. But before 30 minutes, the Direwolves are in good control of the match. However, you did get a great comeback. You were able to take the game for your team. At what point did you, or what point did your team feel like, you know, we're back in this, we can win this one?
We had Tristana and we are scaling more than them because we had 2 Fire Drakes. So we actually was behind in gold, but we are winning because the more the game goes on, we're close to victory.
Which is great to see. You guys did take that victory, and there's been a very historic rivalry between Oceania as well as Brazil, time and time again. Now you get to go into that deciding match, the last game to decide who moves on to the next stage. Are you confident to take this one down, to pick up the win for not only your home country, but also your team?
Totally. Eu acho que, I think we never stop trying. Even the games we get stomped, I don't know what actually did we not play our best, but now we feel like we encounter ourselves and we're gonna do our best.
Well, best of luck to you guys later on. We're gonna go straight back to you guys to get this game going on.
Thank you, Fish, and welcome to our tiebreaker game between Direwolves and Team One Esports. And I like Vert still keeping a cool head despite all the pressure being placed upon him. And we have to remember, yes, this is the Oceanic versus Brazil rivalry, but it took a pretty miraculous win in the final opportunity that they had to even get us to this point.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. It's just they won through really strong 5v5 team fighting. You heard Vert saying that they had to wait for it to actually get there. They had the double Infernal Dragon. That was a big part of why they were able to actually get to that point in the game despite the gold deficit. And from there, they were actually able to out-team fight Direwolves, who seemed to struggle at that portion of the game a little bit.
Yeah, but on the same time, I mean, Direwolves, if they can just keep their head cool. And the thing is we talk so much about Surenfire, about the bot lane, about Fantix, but we never really talk about Coach Sharp behind them because it's always up to that 6th man. Like, now is his time to make or break this squad. Can he keep the Direwolves cool? They don't lose a lot. They don't play from behind a lot, and now it's up to him. We saw King's face, like head in hands, seemed very disappointed with that because so often Direwolves get just there and fall short.
We talk about that. We've seen that Team One can hold it together on an emotional level. Let's talk a little bit about the strategy coming into this game. We've seen what has been successful for Direwolves. They had a lot of those same exact kind of picks, utility in the bottom lane, and it didn't work out. What do they need to change coming into this game to make sure that they can take Team One down?
So I think Absolute, when you got that Tristana pick, looked like a beast. I know it took a little bit of time for him to get online, so where he could shine, but you want to limit that option for him because Tristana is a very unique pick in the meta where she has a lot of agency. She doesn't rely quite on as much as the rest of the team. In team fights, she can hop in, she can hop out, deal with her own stuff, bust her shot to protect herself. So taking that out of Absolute's hands is a good place to start.
And for me, on the other side, in Surenfire's hands, it's going to be the Sejuani pick. He went absolutely massive on it every single time he's grabbed the pick. Sejuani, yeah, we know her for big mid-game spikes, but even in the early game, she's being so effective and then hyper-scales into late game with just being that unkillable CC tank bot.
Now, are there any other champions that can fit those kind of roles? Sejuani in the jungle we talked about was a big pick. It has been banned away a lot. Can they just ban it away here? And in the same note, if they ban that Tristana, are there other characters with either similar amounts of agency in the case of the Tristana or similar amounts of just raw power in the case of the Sejuani?
I mean, I think if you end up getting rid of the Tristana, I'd rather just see him take a well-scaling champion. So if he grabs the Kog'Maw, something like that is a great choice. I mean, you can take things like Twitch if you want to give your best player some playmaking tools, but it is very volatile in the early game, which is a little different than the Tristana, who for the most part always gets out of early game just fine. So it's tough once that Tristana is gone. That's why she is so prevalent in the meta right now.
I think the biggest thing is just emphasizing the 5v5 and the team fighting ability. That's where Team One have shined. Their ability to sculpt it, to engineer, and to create those perfect environments. Direwolves just run headfirst into every single fight, and sometimes it's in their favor, and most of the time it hasn't been.
And that's the big concerning thing, right, is that ultimately, if they can smash the landing phase, and which they kind of did, again, it just doesn't matter if they can't actually close out these games.
Yeah, they did it against Team One as well as Cloud9 and lost both those games, you know, post 20 minutes. So it's just this kind of like opened up map correctly identifying what objective and how to attack it, where the Direwolves are stumbling.
And I think that's the big thing for one, just that they seem to have this resiliency, even in their own region. You heard a lot of teams kind of almost bad-mouthing them a little bit, saying, like, I don't know how these guys win. They do these crazy plays, they go bad, and somehow they still win. And part of that comes down to the fact that they don't lose their cool when that play goes bad. And that's something a lot of teams struggle with. If a play goes horribly wrong, they're just like, oh, the game's over. And that's something that oNe doesn't do, and that they'll keep fighting. And if Direwolves aren't able to get that under control, that's where they're going to have a big problem.
And that's ultimately the biggest scary thing, right? Because even in that game that they won, we saw massive CF deficits. We saw huge deficits coming in lane phase, but it wasn't enough. It didn't matter at the end of the day because Direwolves were getting caught out. They were getting picked off. And if you are Coach Sharp in this case, is this something that you can shift and say, hey, guys, we can just play 5v5 together? I mean, what is the strategy you approach coming into this in terms of rallying your guys together?
I mean, again, it's that keyword, rally. Fix the morale there. Make sure that the Direwolves are in a very healthy state of mind. Again, Oceania, pressure is on. We have been here so many times before, but then past that, looking at the macro strategy, it's just setting up your guys for success. Get them on the comfort picks, play the style that you know is comfortable, and hopefully they snowball the gold early enough in the game that they can just roll over those team fights.
And it just feels so difficult because this is, I think, the most pressure that they have experienced in their careers, more pressure for young players on an international stage, because at the end of the day, this is the Oceania-Brazil rivalry. On top of that, this is one of their first opportunities to advance to this larger bracket stage.
But it's also the fact that it's kind of new characters taking the stage. It's a very old rivalry, but this has always been like Chiefs and INTZ, and is now the Direwolves and Team ONE here. So it's kind of mirrored in a sense, and yeah, the rivalry is technically 5-2 to Oceania's favor, but it's never Oceania that went the distance and made it to Worlds. It was always Brazil.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, just on the Brazilian side. Team ONE, so young, all of them, I think, under 20 years old, so that's just something that it's so difficult to deal with at that young of an age, the pressure of your whole region watching you.
Yeah, time to find out who can perform under that pressure, however, as we send it to the casters for the final game of the day.
Thank you, Dracos, and welcome to exactly what he said, the final game of the day, the tiebreaker between Direwolves and Team ONE to see who is going to get to go on to the next stage and who will see their world's journey end here. We got to have our fun last game, got to have a little bit of a break from the seriousness of the competition, but now we're back, and this one matters a lot for both these teams.
Yep, certainly does. Loser goes home, winner goes to the best of 5 to advance to the group stage of Worlds. So obviously this game does mean a whole lot, but you have to remember that the stakes here are that Team ONE beat them earlier today. Team ONE beat Direwolves, but Direwolves
beat them an hour ago,
the day before. So we actually are 1-1 as far as this series is concerned. This is the third game in what is now effectively a best of 3. This is the decider. And there are so many things you could start with, so many different things you could look at that ultimately make the difference.
And we talked at the end of the last game between these two, an hour ago, about the mental condition of the Direwolves. And it's like Froskuren said, they've been here so many times before. They have made it to the edge time and time again, but it's that edge, that barrier that always keeps them on the other side. And now they've got a chance once more to push through, get to that next stage, but they've got to be able to conquer their own issues from the previous game in order to do it.
Yeah, both teams actually share a lot of similarities. For the Direwolves, maybe the mental game has the slight edge, but they're both young teams. They've both got a lot to prove, and this is the game where they both attempt to prove that at the highest level, to say we do have what it takes on this international stage to go to the best of 5s, to meet the playoffs, to go to group stage of Worlds even, because losing here, you just don't get to.
No, you have to go to that next stage if you want to be able to really prove yourselves on the international level. Best of ones, a lot of people say, oh, you know, best of ones, it's full of these crazy matches where anybody can upset anybody, but best of 5s, that's really where you prove your mettle. That's how you show that you're a real top caliber team. You get the chance to do that if you can move on from this stage, if you can go to that knockout portion of the play-ins, which will happen just a few days from now. But first, they've got to get through this one last test here in playoff groups. Direwolves going to be in Cassiopeia, Braum, and Rakan. Team ONE taking Jarvan, Sejuani, and Syndra off the table.
Now we are on the blue side of the rift for the Direwolves and the red side for Team ONE Esports. That means whilst we could look at the Tristana, and it was mentioned on the analyst desk as something that may want to be addressed, ultimately we do still have the opportunity to pick an AD carry for themselves. I was going to mention that if you pick anything that is utility for the Direwolves bottom lane, Kalista is the best hybrid of utility and hard carrying. They've gone for that, but they have left open Absolute's Tristana.
And that Tristana looks like it will be the first pick for the side of Team One. Going back to that thing that was so huge in carrying in the previous game. We saw him hit that 7, 2, and 3 KDA. We saw him time and again just provide the damage. The one criticism that I had for him specifically, especially early on, he's super aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving him the Tristana, you'd say has to be a mistake based off that last game. But this is the other thing that we really need to talk about. It was missed in the ban phase. I think this is the first time it hasn't been banned against him. Suddenly, he's locked it in. He's excited. You saw him on the player cameras. Team One Esports are ready to go.
This champion has done so much work for him in the past. I believe the record is 7-1 on this champ. So lots and lots of carry potential on the Olaf for 4-land. There's a reason it's been banned against him up until now. Schernfire locking in the Gragas to deal with that. Fantix grabbing himself the Corki. I don't know how this is going to work out because Fantix's Corki last time, he had some positioning issues. He had some problems being also over-aggressive with his Valkyries. He's going to need to address those problems here in this final game.
Yeah, credit where it's due. The issue was with the positioning, not the champion. So by locking in the Corki, of course, he still should be okay. Did a lot of work in the early game, and it was still something the Direwolves could have won. But there's already changes in the composition where the Corki kind of fulfills that different role. Varus was a facilitator. Kalista can be a harder carry.
Team One going to lock in that Alistar as their final pick in the first half of the draft here. Going to go ahead and use that one to support the Tristana. You can help her disengage and be all kinds of useful.
Yeah, certainly. And even a Morgana taken off the board here from Team One Esports away from Direwolves. Moving past that, you've got the bottom lane of Team One. You don't have the bottom lane of the Direwolves, just the Kalista locked in. I like this idea, though. Try and disempower that Kalista a bit more against people that are obviously going to be barreling you down.
Galio banned away by the Direwolves. They don't want to be dealing with that one. Thresh taken out by Team One Esports. Double support bans in the second part here.
You've got Rakan banned by the Direwolves second, so then you get rid of the Morgana, you get rid of the Thresh, and you've already picked the Alistar. You do really start to stretch out and limit that champion pool for what Destiny's going to be able to lock in for themselves. And in particular, things that work well with the Kalista for the 2v2 are now starting to go.
Right, you love seeing those kinds of playmaking melee type champions with Kalista because she can just pull them in and then throw them into the fight. But now, with the Alistar picked and everything else banned away, that's kind of limited. So with Mundo now banned out, that's one of those vert split pushers. Not available for these guys. What are you going to pick? Team One hovering on the Aurelion Soke.
And actually locking it in. Marth, once again, he's known for his Cassiopeia, known for his Aurelion Soul. They're the two champions that separate him from Bruiser, and one of the reasons that he may be looking at playing now is that ability to roam. Instead of Talia, instead of matching what a Corki can do, he's going to spice it up.
I'm really looking forward to watching this. As someone who normally casts in ALCS, you only ever get to potentially see this from a CLG game with Huhi picking it out. Nobody else plays this. It's a rare champion, but when played correctly, it can do a lot of work. And if Marth really is an expert on Aurelion Soul, it'll be fun to watch him make those plays this game. He will be going up against that Corki that we talked about earlier, and the other solo laner, the Rumble, locked in for the Direwolves.
Yeah, certainly the case. So with Aurelion Soul there, with the outplay, but a lot of roaming to be seen from both mid lane as we wait for the rest of the team compositions. Direwolves, I kind of like that if they're going to pick anything in the support role.
Picking up that Taric for themselves means they'll have some more frontline capability. Especially nice when you do have that more of a carry top laner. You got to make sure you have more than just the Gragas on the front if you want to keep the Corki and the Kalista protected. Plus, that Cosmic Radiance, a game changer, a single button that can be the difference between winning and losing a game. Very, very important for these big team fights as Team One decides their final pick of the game will be Camille to deal with the Rumble.
And Camille locked in for that 1v1 with the ability to split push and also a fair amount of outplay when you highlight that 1v1 specifically. If you are able to stun him while he's flame spittering in the wrong direction, you'd sacrifice a bit of damage from Chippy, so he might start losing these trades. But ultimately we look at that and we say it's another notch in the belt here for Team One Esports for win conditions. Aurelion Soul's roaming early, Tristana's team fighting, 4-land's ability to clear hard and fast and get an advantage over Schernfire, and then you've got Vert with the split push.
And I always like comparing sort of where you stand in terms of your goals and where you recognize your chances to win this are between a couple of games, because if you looked at the last game these two teams played, anybody would have said, I want to be in the Direwolves spot, because they only had to win one game. They wouldn't have had to play a tiebreaker. That was it. But now coming into this game, after having the momentum from game number 2 that these teams have played together, and after making it to this point where you're now once again on even ground, I think most people would say, I'd rather be in Team 1's shoes.
They have that momentum, and it's just crazy that this is the game they choose to bring out the Aurelion Sol, that they get the Olaf, that all of the stars seem to have aligned for the Brazilian side up against Oceania here. But the track record is against them, so momentum is there. But Oceania always seems to best Brazil. The question is, can they do it and get to the playoffs?
Brazil 2-5 versus Oceania at international Riot events. That's not the most impressive win record. I think it's around like a little shy of 30%, 28 or 29 or something, but it doesn't matter because right now, if they win just this one game, this is what sends them forward.
Tarek just casually disappearing, but he's back, don't worry.
He's back. It was just a juke.
As we are here for the last game of the day.
Interesting start from the Corki, going with the Cull. Very first purchase, confident that he's not too worried about how this lane's going to be playing out, that he can just farm it up and cash in on that gold a little bit later.
Yeah, instead of going for something like the Doran's Shield, Doran's Blade for extra trading and auto-attacking, it proves that he wants to farm and that he may not have the best time through laning phase, but he's acknowledged that and that they both just want to get to that 100 CS mark. It seems unabided by, or unprevented from anything that one throw at him. It is risky.
Look at Team 1 in this level 1, roaming around together as 5, looking for a chance to maybe set something up.
We know what happened last time at level 1 between both of these teams, and I don't think they want to make that mistake again. No one's going to stand still. No one's going to sit in a bush. In fact, they have placed wards, though, that will spot exactly where Schönfire starts.
Keeping tabs on that Gragas going to be very important. We know how Gragas can be effective as an early ganker, or if he needs to, he can just farm up. You talked about how the Olaf has the power clear, and that's also something to keep in mind. Gragas isn't somebody who's going to want to duel an Olaf. There are very few champions in the game of League of Legends that want to come across Olaf and say, you know what? I want to fight this guy.
Yeah, that is absolutely the case. And at level 1, you don't want to be fighting the Olaf either. So I like that the Direwolves were passive, that they were safe, that they protected themselves. And I respect that Fallen and the rest of Team 1 Esports went in to try and find them, because 1 axe hits, suddenly 6 hit. As this is expected through the mid lane 1v1. It begins.
Marf utilizing the power of the Celestial expansion to get this all pushed up. Very, very useful at level 1 to just position yourself off to the side like that of the wave, hit all the minions at once, and just shove that up into your opponent's territory and make it so he's just focused on strictly farming instead of trying to deal with you.
Yeah, and straight back to the Raptors where he can place another ward, refresh that, find Schönfire. Forlan, he's top.
All right, Chippies gets himself stunned up. He has to immediately blow the flash. Forlan uses the Ghost for it, but trading the Ghost for the flash is a trade you'll take any day.
Yeah, absolutely. The cooldown is far less on the Ghost, so the flash will be gone for a significant amount of time. However, that was the red buff. That was Olaf revealing himself on the Rift, so he'll take the flash, but if he doesn't come back to utilize the flash missing, it's not going to be all that worth when Schönfire now gets free time to try and get some extra CS.
King and Destiny farming up down here in the bottom side. Just gotta be mindful about what Absolute can do on the Tristana. We talked about it in Champion Select, and I want to talk about it here again because this guy was the carry there in game number 2.
Yeah, he definitely was. And they've got him on the champion to carry super hard one more time. We did just see a ward, I believe, actually, not even a ward, just Vision from Redbird walks over to this blue buff, tries to secure the control for Fallan. And this is what happens when you gank top lane at level 2. He's gone towards his chickens, now straight over to the blue buff, but it was protected. It was allowed by the side of Team 1 and prevented from the Direwolves to get into that area. It's clever, I like it, and I appreciate the teamwork that we're seeing from these guys.
Honestly, Team 1, such a new team. Like we talked about it earlier, these guys, nobody expected them to get here. You can see over on the side there, the stats for that Olaf we were talking about. It is a 7-1 win-to-loss record, 4.9 KDA in the 2017 CBLOL Winter Split. These guys, very scary when they've got this champion under their belts, and this entire team is just such a surprise that they're here, and we've already mentioned how a lot of the fans and other teams are surprised that they're here, and many of them not happy that Team 1 is here, but if Team 1 could win this game, if Team 1 could come back from that 0-2 start that they had on day number 1 and make it into the best-of-5 knockout stage, that is a message to send home to the home region.
Perhaps they're not happy, but Team 1 are the team that they've sent because they won the CBLOL, so now it's on them to prove themselves and try and stop people from having any reason to hate you in the first place. And by winning this, I feel like they've justified it in the end. They're the second best team. They get the best of 5 to send themselves to the group stages.
absolutely a justification, but they do have to get there first. Redbird trying to run forward, get that stun on auto attack, but can't quite find it. Marf wants to make the rotation down
He's
the
already
bottom
in.
side now as
He's
well.
100% already in. Gragas is recalling, so this gank is on.
Comet of Legend comes in. King trying to get himself away, has already popped the flash. Star Surge gets the stun into the follow-up CC combo. King still walking away from this one, but not for long. The first blood goes to Redbird.
And just what you expect from an Aurelion Soul, able to come towards the bottom lane, utilize the fact that he can hard push mid, gets the roam off, uses the E, but saves his Q until they're in a position where they have to juke. But when they do, straight into the waiting arms of Redbird on that Alistar. Both summoner spells used by King, not gonna keep him alive.
Well executed by the side of Team 1. It feels good to get the kill, but it feels great to get the kill and expend both the summoner spells, because now you've got that much more momentum to work with without even needing another gank.
Yeah, and it was timed honestly super well. Schönfire had just gone back to base, and he was in the bottom lane. Still though, he's looking towards mid.
Marf just hanging out, not too worried about it.
So the problem that Marf has now run himself into is that he is losing mid lane rather hard as a result of all of the roaming that he had. You know, at level 1, when you hard push mid lane, you press W, you lose all of your mana. You're not necessarily going to get every CS when you're doing that. Most of his focus is on controlling the minions, not controlling Fantix. The risk is always going to be that Fantix then becomes too strong through all of these roams. But thankfully for him, the one time he went bottom, it was in fact successful. That sets up, unfortunately, the Alistar getting the kill, but it still gives him some extra experience, some extra gold, and it helps the whole map stay alive.
Right, he gets 100 gold for splitting the assist money on First Blood. He gets the EXP, he gets to help his buddies out down south, and at the same time, he's still maintaining relevancy in the mid lane. He's not ahead by any means. I mean, he's not going to be walking up to Fantix and flexing his dragon muscles saying, get out of my lane.
Not at all, yes.
But you've got to be aware of him, especially as the Dire Wolves bottom lane. That return gank could be even more deadly now that he's got the level 6 Voice of Light. I mean, Fantix level 6. Corki's also
teleport, to be fair. Corki has teleport, and in 1.5 minutes he'll have the package as well. So options are there for Dire Wolves, except for this one. You wouldn't really call that an option.
No, it's a little bit unfortunate for them. The ward is going to spot him out. Looks like the bottom lane of Team 1's paying a bit more attention than Blasting was last game. Who walks through warded bushes.
They certainly are paying attention. This game's very important, even contrasting the two that we just saw. So Schönfire reveals himself. It means that Olaf gets free time to start farming the jungle. It also means that Marf gets the recall in. No one's going to prevent him from doing that. Doesn't mean his recall was great. It's a mana crystal. But he got it.
He got it, right. We'll have to see what exactly he wants to end up building that into. Likely the Hextech GLP is usually one of the favorites that we see on Aurelion Sol players. Hunter's Potion completed for both junglers this time. Not an item that you see in a majority of games, but for a champion like Olaf that's hard-pressed by mana issues, it can come in very useful to make sure you can keep your clear speed up. Team 1 currently sits on that 500 gold lead they earned through First Blood, but that is still just about it. Marf, one on Fantix here, scaring him back with the Celestial expansion. First Drake is infernal, as it has been so many times already tonight, Rusty. It's as if the Drakes themselves are encouraging these early
They want
fights.
the team fighting. Well, speaking of, there is a big opportunity here to kill Fantix. He's been playing super aggressively. He's been looking to trade with Marf, because Marf is trading his health to clear the waves as here they go.
There's your flash, your stun, your initiation, and the Hextech ultimatum to make sure there's no escape. Redbird now might pay for it with his own life. Gets the stun onto Schönfire with the auto attack.
He might live.
Redbird has no summoner spells left. Schönfire has flash and body slam. They just go for it here. Destiny also cutting him off. Yep. Redbird is the sacrificial cow, and Schönfire cashes in.
Yeah, King doesn't quite get it, but Schönfire will secure the trade. And ultimately, with the amount of resources that went into killing Fantix, it was executed well. You'll give them that credit. But the fact that Schönfire is in the right place to get a trade is something that you would take as a big positive in the end for Dials. However, it is one making the plays. It is one rotating around Summoner's Rift, and they are the team that looks significantly better right now with momentum running around.
They have the momentum, and they have a very slight gold lead. Passing that blue buff off now to Marf so he can continue to shove, abuse that Celestial expansion pretty much non-stop. King and Destiny, 73 farm on this Callista compared to the 76 of the Tristana, so a very slight lead for Absolute, but essentially dead even between these guys in bottom lane. The roam from the Camille will also set Vert a little bit behind in terms of farm, but you don't really care about that considering you got yourself a kill onto that mid lane Corki. Remember Vert, the split pusher, the win condition this team go off, and as Marf Now finds himself jumped on by Fantix, forced to pop the flash to get over the wall. So many times, Rusty, we see Corky's not get a lot of use out of that first package because teams play around it, they're aware of it, but Marf is caught off guard that time.
Yeah, and I really like that from Fantix. He uses it just in his lane to get a bit of extra control. Well, that's both summoners gone. Vert, he's trading hard.
Yeah, Chippies tries to go in on this. I don't think he realizes exactly how much damage Camille can dish out in those short bursts. Hook shot for the stun into the follow-up damage from the precision protocol. Chippies definitely loses that one.
Now we are looking at Chippies losing these trades, and that's expected. You know, Camille's pretty strong this early into the game, and Chippies didn't have a chance to control the minions, so he'll be able to clear this wave. It's the Equalizer burn, to be fair. The Rumble Ultimate's going to be painful that it's missing, but ultimately he's holding on. And that's the thing. We're looking at the Direwolves composition that is very good at level 11. Very good at 1.5 items, maybe 2 items between them all. They spike incredibly hard. When you look at the side of one, Trinity Force is going to be big. Olaf can just go Cinderhulk if he'd like and still be relevant because he's an Olaf, but pretty much always the same amount of scaling strength. Tristana's the one you look towards, and I feel like they spike at relatively similar timings, and that's when it gets really impactful.
Absolute jumps himself over the wall. Redbird a little bit too far ahead right now. Schernfire jumps in, but Forlan is ready and waiting in the wings. Marv comes over the wall. Common of Legend doesn't exactly bring him far enough. Callista Ghost expires there in the Dragon Pit. Doesn't look like they're going to try to start this one up immediately, though.
No, Marf was there just in case in the end. If the fight happened, which was unlikely ultimately, then he would have been able to secure some follow-up kills, perhaps the turret, because that's just how quickly this Aurelion Sol is able to get from mid to the bottom lane. Fantix, though, is getting closer and closer to that Trinity Force spike. Already has the 2 summoner spells used by Marf and has had control of this middle lane, at least through the 1v1. And this opens up opportunities for the Direwolves roster. This is one of those opportunities, but this is still a risky one.
This is very brave coming from Schernfire and the rest of the Direwolves. The collapse could be imminent from Team 1.
King's in a position to be collapsed on.
King's right there in the dead center of the river, putting a lot of spears into the Infernal Drake. It's going to be secured by the Direwolves, but now the fight breaks out. Cosmic Radiance down to keep King protected. Absolute keeping himself safe over the wall, but it's Schernfire who's caught out by the rest of the Wolves. By the rest of Team 1, excuse me. The Wolves nowhere in position to keep Schernfire alive. He drops the first casualty of this fight. They did, however, get the Infernal Drake, so it's worth for now.
Oh, no.
Direwolves may still get caught out. Pulverize comes through. Fantix trying to get himself away. Does manage to do so by saving the flash until the very end of that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's 1 kill for 1 Drake. Direwolves will call that worth.
I am super surprised he even got the Valkyrie out at all there to flash to safety, but he barely lives. One are playing incredibly smartly around that vision, and this is one of those moments where just the extra damage was all they needed. Yes, the Drake went to Direwolves, and it's an Infernal Drake. Opportunities for a teleport are there.
Doesn't look like they'll take them.
No,
Not
they're
yet.
teleporting twice.
Made a liar out of me right quick. Chippies comes in, Equalizer comes down. Nice Star Surge onto both solo laners from the Direwolves. Celestial Expansion going to be buying a little bit of extra time as well. Vert flashing away, no mana left. He'll survive.
And everybody lives, so Team 1 Esports playing incredibly well about disengaging as a team. They're separating themselves, but also acknowledging that separation is for very good intent. And they will all get out alive, which is the biggest surprise of all. Not even one sacrifice.
Both teleports sacrificed from the Direwolves, though, to not get anything out of the play except for a flash. Not what you wanted to see from those big cooldowns being expended. Chippies thought he was coming in there with a massive Equalizer, but the problem is the Star Surge was just so perfectly placed from Marv to stun them both up and buy that extra little bit of time that allowed one to escape without any casualties.
Yeah, Vert also being able to stun Fantix at the same time as the stuns hitting there from Aurelion Sol. So they do their work as a team, they disengage well as a team. We are getting closer to that point we mentioned, however. Yes, the teleports are gone, but if Direwolves can get the team fights with the item spikes, they are super close to spiking.
Direwolves collapsing now onto the bottom lane, tier 1 with Schernfire and both bottom laners. Should have no problem taking this one out. The only person around is Vert. He can't really do anything but look on as the turret drops. Meanwhile, one will be doing the same thing in the top part of the map, taking down that outer turret.
Of course, actively choosing not to do something, but he may even look for an opportunity to gank in the mid lane, take what he can from this situation. That's because Absolute and Redbird are pushing the top lane, getting structures of their own, so they're trading equally. Olaf is at full health, however, so the turret taking of Team 1 isn't optimal.
Right. Olaf, one of those champions that sometimes you would rather just be able to throw your axe at yourself, take a little bit of damage off, and start attacking faster. Sadly, that's not the way the League of Legends works, so just have to settle for being 100% HP for now. as both teams head up around the Rift Herald. This may be our next point of contention. Scryer's Bloom fired off by Schernfire as he belly slams over the wall, and it looks like the Wolves are going to start this one up.
Yeah, Vert not nearby. He's about to walk through vision in the middle lane. So Direwolves now, they make the decision. Do they want this? Do they want to fight for this? Because Team 1 will most likely run at them for it.
Redbird getting himself caught out a little bit here, has to flash away. Schernfire popping his own flash now as well. Redbird, the one who is now standing alone. Pop the Alistair ultimate, trying to tank these guys as long as he can, but even through that ulti, 5 versus 1 is not the kind of a fight you're going to be winning. They will trade that Alistar away for the mid-tier 1 though, as 1 now has priority on this one with the Tristana, along with that Camille and the Olaf. They burn it down very quickly. That's a good trade.
Very good decision from them. Yes, it's a very good trade. It's a reactive trade ultimately from Team 1. That's what you want. And right now, Direwolves, they've got a pick, they've got a numbers advantage. Well, Redbird's now back alive, so the numbers advantage starts to dwindle, and Chippy's may be caught.
Speaking of numbers advantages, the Star Search comes down, the damage goes through, the stun onto Chippies, and 1 again punishes Direwolves for not being fully aware of their surroundings.
And we are consistently seeing Chippies get caught out of position. This isn't the only case of it happening. Fantix is going to trading at the top turret, but he may lose his life for this. I mean, he's left it, he hasn't gone for the turret. There's a chance that both now don't happen at all.
Turret's still alive, many minions beating on it though. Absolute jumps over, tries to put himself in a good position to make sure they get this kill, and they will. The Hextech ultimatum makes sure he's going nowhere. Vert grabbing the killing spree on that one, 3-0-1 on this Camille, 80% kill participation, and 1 with a 5-2 lead, 2,000 gold up. Now heads over to the Rift Herald.
Nothing's gonna stop a Camille ultimate from locking you in as a Corki. There's no way to outplay that, such as what a Tristana can do. It's a Direwolves solo laners, both caught just through walking up and down the river. They get the 2 picks, and suddenly an objective is done for Team 1.
I'm feeling like this is deja vu, Rusty. This is exactly what the errors Direwolves were committing in Game 2 were. They were getting themselves caught out, they weren't fully aware of exactly where 1 could be, and they weren't respecting those possibilities. It got them picked, and then 1 got objected.
And that's frustrating, Mr. Flowers, because that's the kind of thing that you go backstage and you should be able to correct in a tournament like this. That's a simple thing of knowing when you should be backing. Communicating perhaps between the team could ultimately be the easiest fix above all else regarding that. But it isn't something that has been fixed just yet, and it hasn't been the game breaker. It isn't the deal breaker for the Direwolves ultimately thus far into the game, but it's putting Team 1 Esports in the lead, and you can't afford to do that.
No, not when they have the ability to scale with this Tristana, with this Aurelion Soul. Hextech GLP done, Infinity Edge done. Remember, you've still got time. Tristana comes online with that 3-item power spike. We're only at about 1.5 now, but Vert's looking pretty scary in his own right. One thing I want to point out is the fact that Vert isn't really obsessed with going for that fast Trinity Force this game. He was much more concerned with just balancing his build out, making sure he has important defense and utility options too.
Chippy's just teleported mid lane and the Herald was summoned top. They want the Infernal that bad, but everyone's got an answer.
Team 1 trying to stop this Infernal. All they want to do is delay it. Absolute jumping over that terrain to make sure he's safe with the rest of his team. Ragnarok, Forland trying to make sure he can secure this one. It's ultimately picked up by the Direwolves, but can they find anyone else? Forland's going to be locked down. There comes your Equalizer, able to secure 1 kill. Cosmic Radiance to keep them safe, but there's not really anything threatening their health to begin with. Vert grabs the tier 2 on the top side. 1 now wants to stop backs. They need to keep these guys from getting back there and protecting their inhibitor turret. It's Chippies who's teleporting back. Recalling back, I should say. Teleporting, not the right turn of phrase here, but Vert's putting quite a lot of damage into this tier 3. To lose this at 18 minutes is a disaster. They will keep it safe.
They are lucky that that is going to be safe, that that is going to be alive. If that was a Trinity Force Camille, things may have ultimately been different, but no Sheen, so no chance to take down the structure. Direwolves will count their blessings because that is still 2 Infernal Drakes for them, and the kill is the end result above all else. But One have the answer with that Rift Herald play. The fact that Vert had it to spawn it, opposed to giving it to Forland, really like the creativity.
With that second turret, that means that they're going to go up to a grand total of 4 compared to the 1 of their opponents. Let's take another look at the fight here from Direwolves.
And what Schernfire does here as well, forcing the ultimate out of Forland on the Olaf, was clever. He's able to use that. Unfortunately for him, the timing afterwards, wants to time it with the Olaf ult ending in the cast, just misses it by 1.5 seconds perhaps. So they have to use extra resources. They have to flash forwards. They secure the kill, but meanwhile, Camille was taking everything that belonged to them.
3-5 our overall team score. Still about 2,000 gold separating these two squads. But remember, there's a lot of gold value in the bonus stats being gained by Direwolves and Infernal Drakes as well. So we've pretty much got an even game between these two teams. It will come down to execution.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny when you look at it. The last time these two played against each other, one were the team who had the Infernal Drakes, but now the shoe's on the other foot, and the question is, can Direwolves team fight to the same level that Team One did in that previous game where the Brazilian side came out on top? Because that's what Direwolves have to do with these Drakes.
I like the fact that the front line of One is grabbing at least those Spectre's Cals before they opt into the other items that they want, really respecting the massive amounts of AoE magic damage coming out from Chippies and Shurnfire and Fantix.
Yeah, and the Merc Treads even for Camille in the top lane. Against the Rumble, you don't necessarily need Mercs. I don't know how caught Redbird is.
Redbird popping the ulti pretty early here. Marv trying to deal with Fantix in a 1v1 situation. Shurnfire forced to flash away. Destiny going to be caught out. Can't keep himself alive with the Cosmic Radiance. It does not come down in time.
Oh, here they go.
Forland popping the Ragnarok, looking to go in. Voice of Light finding the slow onto 2. Fantix trying to escape, but he's not going to be able to do it. The double kill for Absolute. King looking to get away. No way out. The damage is there, and One wins the fight. A triple for Absolute.
Big kills for the Tristana. No chance for Direwolves to win a team fight in a situation like that. Destiny just throws himself at the enemy side, realizes maybe I shouldn't be here, but the Taric ultimate doesn't complete. Shurnfire should be okay, but Vert's not going to let him get away with this, as they do Herald. Oh, Baron, rather.
Going to waste as much of his time as possible. Forlan and Absolute trying to two-man this Baron down, saying, get over here, Redbird. Cast your heal or something. Forlan's very, very low.
Oh, no.
They might not be able to do it. Redbird, get in there. You got to face tank it. Okay, that was close.
They're teleporting in, actually. I guess they just really want to trade here, Direwolves.
They'll potentially catch Vert. Wants to take the blast cone. Fantix reading him. Vert trying to escape. Not today. They'll shut him down, which is nice because that means he won't have the Baron buff, so the split push is going to be hurt compared to what it could be.
Yes.
But you still trade Baron for Camille.
That's super nice and a good read from Fantix. He gets a shutdown, so extra gold in his back pocket ultimately as well. The Corki's getting a lot of extra things from that kill, but you are correct. When we put it into context, what is one kill and a shutdown compared to a Baron buff that the side of One got?
Well, now it's up to One. They've got everything ready to go. The ball is in their court. They're the ones who get to call the shots. Redbird, pulverize. Waiting for the stun. There we go. Wants to get the headbutt too. Absolute shows up. Explosive charge is armed and ready, and there you go. The damage is enough. Absolute's on a rampage. Static Shiv plus Infinity Edge means the damage is going to be very scary, especially on one of the squishy targets.
The amount of deja vu is severe that I'm currently experiencing.
We've been in this place before, Rusty.
I certainly think we have. As once again, Fantix finds himself out of position, and he's up creek without a paddle as a Corki. And he's crowd controlled everywhere. So now the Baron buff actually has a 4v5 advantage.
And here we go. Team One pushing down the mid lane onto the tier 2 that, well, no more tier 2 anymore. Takes that one out, no contest. 5-2 in the turret count overall. 5,000 gold up, 22 minutes in. That is a significant lead at this point in the game.
Yeah, it really is. Now, they are up against 2 Infernal Drakes, but with the way that Team One Esports are set up to compete right now, the Trinity Force is there. They've got the big items on most of their members, including Absolute with the 2 AD carry items for Tristana, just working towards that next deal item. They have the makings to end this game with the strength they've got. They just need to try and find a way in to crack the armor. Right now, they've been picking Fantix out of position to do exactly that, but he is back alive, so the second chance draw is there, and you would say it's the last chance for the Direwolves.
Forlan utilizing the Ragnarok to escape the potential collapse there from Shurnfire and the rest of the Direwolves. One more hit would take this turret down. Have to see who actually goes in to get it. Vert could jump in there if he wanted to, but Marv just walks up, breathes a little bit of Starfire onto it, takes that one out of the picture. 6-2 now the overall turrets. One still has another 60 seconds or so of Baron remaining to continue to pressure into the base. They have nothing left outside of the base to take, though. It's important to note now, if One wants to make any more objective plays against their opponents, it's got to be into the base or onto the Cloud Drake.
Yeah, I mean, the Cloud Drake's the free objective that they can take for themselves. Of course, by taking it right now, it's not going to spawn an Elder. They get rid of the Cloud to make sure the next Drake might be something that they want a bit more. But guess what? You get another.
It's another Cloud.
Unfortunate for them. No, mind you, there's only one more Infernal to be seen.
Right, and we won't get to see it at all because the fastest you could possibly get the next Drake is about 30 minutes.
Correct.
Which means any Drake taken after the 29-minute mark means the next one's going to be Elder. So
2 fires, 2 clouds.
2 fires, 2 clouds. Wind puts out fire, so that's a good omen for the side of Team 1. So now, the Direwolves catching out Marf is a bad omen for these guys. Great stuff from Direwolves, finally putting the shoe on the other foot, catching the enemy solo laner out, and punishing that lack of awareness.
Wind doesn't always put out fire. It sometimes spreads it to other areas, and just like that, Marf is caught out of position. Thanks for the setup.
All right, Vert continuing to split push. Fantix trying to get
Not
himself
again.
away, but Redbert goes over the wall. He's got the headbutt, got the pulverize, got the stun, and he's even got Absolute there for the backup. They take down the Direwolves mid laner, and Forlan wants to go even further. Gonna tank that turret for quite a while. The Ragnarok preventing him from getting stunned up by the Dazzle. Absolute, he may not have Baron buff too long, but still a Tristana. That turret's gone.
That turret is absolutely gone. Direwolves have to 4v4 hold this just to defend their base because the turret was free, but Camille's going to take bottom lane at the same time. Not a lot of answers for the Direwolves.
This is such a rough situation. Fantix being caught out time and again has proved to be such an Achilles heel for the Direwolves. Forlan, Redbert, Absolute, these 3 are more than enough to take down that top lane inhibitor. They grab that just 25 minutes into the game. Camille continuing to pressure in the bottom side as well. Chippies goes down there to make sure they hold that line. They don't want to lose in 2 places at once. Fantix respawning means that the Team 1 group will manage to get themselves out. But things are looking pretty rough for the Wolves.
They certainly are, and with the team composition they have when behind, their engage does start to feel, I'd say, quite lacking. They've got a Gragas that has to flash body slam engage. The rest of their team composition is mostly damaged, but then you say, well, Kalista can throw in a Taric, and we could call that engage. But with an Ardent Sensor Taric build, you definitely don't want that to be the active primary source of any kind of engagement. You want to be protecting the rest of your team. So ultimately, when behind, they need something special from Schernfire.
By the way, Tristana now with 3 items, just like we were talking about with the Power Spike, plus the Vamp Scepter for extra lifesteal, means we are at the part of the game where Absolute will start to be that massive team fight presence. We've seen his damage be very effective against the squishier targets on the Direwolves, but now with those items, and the fact that the armor isn't really that big of a thing on the side of Direwolves, you don't have anybody stacking these items. You've got a Tabby and a Glory on Schernfire, and that's it. You don't need a lot of armor penetration to go through that.
No, and he is the tankiest member on the team. So ultimately with his item build right now, yeah, he can keep going more damage. I would say he doesn't need to go for the armor penetration straight after. That Vamp Scepter can, in fact, be completed into whatever he would like. Mercurial Scimitar, I guess, would be the best way for him to go. An Absolute, 3 items, he is big, but it's Redbert doing everything.
Oh no, not again. Fantix getting himself stunned up, but Cosmic Radiance is there in time, and Marf actually the first pickup in this fight. This could be huge for the Direwolves. Redbert now into the back line, finding the stun onto Chippies. Forlan's wanting to run up as well. Ragnarok comes down. Absolute gonna be keeping himself safe. Schernfire drops winning. Absolute jumping away, but Fantix in hot pursuit, able to find the damage with the auto attack and the shutdown for Direwolves mid laner.
And Team 1 Esports with a bit of an overreach. They're going straight in, but Schernfire hits the cast and is able to separate them. Fantix isn't that out of position when he's at the middle lane inhibitor, so fortunately for the Direwolves, we're not going to get Deja Vu, but there's the cast, knocks in the Aurelion Soul, and Marf just gets deleted. You have to watch for the red carpet as well that Chippies lays down, because Team 1 just start walking all over that carpet as they're caught very much out of position here. Fantix and King have been free hitting this entire time, so very well done from the Direwolves roster to get back something on the board, completely perhaps reset Summoner's Rift, where you would say the game was over before that.
Hope stays alive for this Direwolves team right now. It was almost an 8,000 gold deficit before. Now they've shrunk that back down to closer to 5.
Just double teleported whilst the Camille is on their inhibitor. So I'm not sure what the game plan is here for the Direwolves.
They're all in.
Baron or nothing.
This is it. This is the kind of play that either wins or loses you the game. And here we go. Team 1 looking to stop him here in the Baron pit. 4 versus 5. Forlan going to be forced off.
But Camille's going to end the game if they keep them busy.
Baron has been taken. They're just trying to stop the back. Schernfire dropping nearly down to dead. Absolute, one more auto attack grabs him. Fantix going to be taken down next. Absolute needs one more, manages to find it, but King's coming around him next. Marf gets the kill onto Fantix. Now King's looking to fight these guys both. He drops 2. Only Chippies remains. The Nexus turret's now under pressure. 1 Baron buff left running on the side of Direwolves. A triple for Marv.
But it's 20 seconds by himself. Chippies, I don't think he has what it takes to try and hold this off. That desperation play from the side of the Direwolves might have just lost them everything.
Chippy's gonna be jumped on, he's taken down, and Team 1 will find their back-to-back victories against the Direwolves, and the representatives from the CB Law will move forward into the knockout stage.
With a big 2-0 on the day, a very much commendable performance and noticed improvement from the entire roster of Team 1 Esports. They go back to their roots, they pick the Tristana, they team fight, and they take apart Oceania's representatives in the Direwolves. That one's gotta hurt.
We talked at the beginning of our first game today, Rusty, about how these teams needed to adapt from day one, to day 2, about what kind of weaknesses they were going to shore up, about what kind of strengths they were going to highlight. And Team 1, yes, they had a rough game against Cloud9 to start the day today, but their performances in both of these games against the Direwolves showed a marked improvement, and they proved that they deserve to have another shot to continue forwards in the knockout stage.
And let's not put it lightly either. Day number 1, they got smashed by the Direwolves. That should not have been close today when you come into this. If you're making a prediction, Direwolves should have beaten them around once again. But that was not the case by any means, because as you mentioned, that marked improvement from Team 1 is something that has done wonders for them. Where the Direwolves, you have to say they did not make a whole lot of improvements themselves. You can see them right now, very much defeated.
And you have to feel for the guys to get to Worlds, to get this far, to be the representative of Oceania.
It doesn't feel good.
To be in a spot where you could, with a single victory, go forward into that next stage, but both times being defeated by the same team that you beat, as you said so convincingly the previous day. The Direwolves will have a lot to consider, a lot to reflect on when they go back and watch the VODs of these games and prepare for how they want to move forward going into next year.
Yeah, and you can see the looks on their faces, man. Just pure defeat from the side of the Direwolves. Well, they were the best team in Oceania, and it just proves that Oceania in this tournament didn't have enough to keep up with the Brazilian side. So they do have a lot to go back and reflect on, but right now, I just hope they feel a little bit better. They look so sad.
It looks bad for the Direwolves right now, and nobody feels good about a loss, but the Direwolves can feel good about the fact that they did make it to Worlds 2017. They did get to compete against some of the best teams from these other regions. And now to get their thoughts on how Team 1 secured their spot in the play-in knockout stage, let's send it back to Dracos and the analysts.
Thank you, Captain Flowers. Of course, in a very intense game. Team 1, I think, much more in the driver's seat than we expected based on the first performance they had against Direwolves. But to a certain degree, it does feel like it all comes back to the draft.
Yeah, this was such a crazy game, just back and forth in terms of how it was being played out. But the big problem for me is just Direwolves did not feel like they stuck to what was kind of working well for them. I think they gave up a little bit too much of some of these comfort picks over to 1.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I don't like this draft at all. I think that this is probably where a lot of their problems started. So first and foremost, in the bans, Rakan and Braum. So targeting out 2 big playmaking supports. We've seen Team 1, we've seen multiple teams pick them up. So they're obviously trying to sculpt something for their bottom lane. They didn't have the priority pick of the Kalista, but they still give away the Tristana. We marked that out. It's not only the Olaf, like the signature pick that comes through. That's probably what everyone should just circle and look at, but it's also that Tristana pick. And when you throw so much at trying to sculpt a good bot lane matchup, you still give away a power pick for absolute like Tristana, and then you still get absolutely blasted in the bot lane repeatedly. Like, everything went wrong, and it started there.
I mean, it was an incredibly difficult game, right? And when we look at it, we expected this team to dominate the laning phase. We thought this game would be entirely decided if they could get, hey, if they don't get a big enough lead in the laning phase, we'll move out of the laning phase, and suddenly Team 1 will be in their wheelhouse. But Team 1 was firing shots from pretty much the start of the game.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the thing. The Aurelion Sol and the Olaf give you so much early game playmaking, which is something that we're not used to seeing out of this team. They're usually picking a lot of team play champions like a Shen and a Talia and these things that want to power spike at 6. Aurelion Sol gets on the map before then, and we saw level 4 roam down the bot lane, and that's something that, if you've been playing this team once or twice in groups, this is not a dimension of them that you've seen before.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, though. Direwolves do well in lane phase, so why not just break lane phase at 4 minutes with an Aurelion Sol roam?
And it definitely worked, and we saw it continue to work as they left the laning phase as well. As we look at our first replay, we can see the Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, Direwolves, the OPL representative, apologies
Salt
to
in the wound.
Direwolves. Just firing shots, finding these picks, finding these opportunities to kill these individual members who have been caught out.
Yeah, and I think the big thing was that it felt like One was still on the same page late into the day where Direwolves were falling apart a little bit. They had a pickoff in the top lane on Direwolves' side after forcing down the Rift Herald, and off the back of it, they actually lose their mid turret and these picks that you're seeing now. The communication just wasn't quite there. People not backing off when they need to back off. And after giving up all of these kills, it's actually one who end up with the Rift Herald.
And they also have then the scaling composition, again, going all the way full circle back to that draft. It was, again, the Tristana versus the Kalista. Direwolves had a very mid-game heavy composition, but if they get blasted in the early game, it doesn't even matter if they make it to the mid-game. They had nothing left in the tank.
And once again, I think we have to praise Team One for their tenacity, right? They looked so, honestly, kind of bad day one. It was really, really hard for them. But they came back here. They came back swinging. We saw the same team that we saw in the finals of CB LOL today, and I think it was very impressive how quickly they were able to adapt.
And we cannot stress this enough. All of these guys are incredibly young. 4 months ago, they were effectively in the Challenger Series. So from 4 months all the way to Worlds, now exiting out into the best of 5, trying to get that chance at the group stage, and then having, you know, like a really tough run. They didn't slow down. They kept going forward. Today, Warriors, tomorrow, Heroes.
I think that's the big thing is just even their own region was like, who are these guys? Why are they beating us? And, you know, you see it again here just in group stage. Day one, it's like, oh, God, they look awful. And then by day two, they're finding wins and they're able to move out of the group stage.
And you have to wonder if the Brazilian fan base is now a lot more willing
They
to rally
should be.
behind Team One. I agree they should be after a performance like that. But we've been very critical of the Direwolves. They did manage to fight back once or twice as we look at the final Baron. They made a decisive call. Backs against the wall, they did something aggressive, but unfortunately for them, when they finally showed this grit, it was too little too late.
But ultimately, at the same time, Team One are also making a very bold, calculated call. They keep Camille into the bot lane. They say, this is fine. Even if the Direwolves get the Baron, which they do because they have the Kalista rend into it, Camille is going to end the game.
And Marf has a huge team fight here. He bounces back completely from the fact that this is all off him getting picked off in the mid lane just a minute ago. He's able to get a ton of his orbs down on multiple members during this team fight. Absolute plays this very well as well. He gets a little too aggressive here, but luckily Marf is here to not get stunned up, able to stay alive and keep those orbs out there, keep dealing damage on Kalista. And once they wipe all those members down, it's just the Rumble left alive. And like we were saying, this whole entire time, Bert was down on the bot side, just pushing away with that Camille.
And if you look back to the previous game these guys played, you remember that gold graph. It was Direwolves' control very much up until the picks and the Baron. This time, very different story. Once again, Team One, absolute dominance here. Some of those comfort picks, much more active early game. And now I wonder, what else do they have as we enter the bracket stage? What else can they show us? Because now we've seen two different sides of the same team.
Two different sides, but we've also seen that they've struggled against the better competition. Even though they bounced back today in a big way, the match versus C9 was equally as lopsided as their game yesterday. So it's still a very tough road for them, looking at what we've seen out of the Pool 1 team so far.
Ultimately, I think a team that's very coordinated in its skirmish potential as well as its team fighting will start to choke up Team One. Again, their macro decisions aren't as clean as they need to be for some of these higher, more experienced ranking teams.
Yeah, and that rounds out that group for us. Got to praise, of course, Team One, kind of the surprise coming in as Seed 2 alongside Cloud9 and the Seed 1. But Groups A and B are both now decided, so let's take a look at those standings overall. Moving on to next week's knockout stage from Group A is Team WE in the #1 seed, Lion Gaming in the #2 seed, and as already mentioned, Group B is going to have Cloud9 Gaming in the top spot with Team One just coming in surprise second seed here in the final hour with the tiebreaker match. Their opponents in the knockout stage are not determined yet. They will be determined by a random draw that will pair a #1 seed with a #2 seed from a different group. That's not going to happen, however, until we see who makes it out of Group C and D, who make their Worlds debut tomorrow. Of course, young generation from the GPL are going to be starting off the day by taking on Chaos Latin Gamers from LATAM South. And then it's going to be LJL's Rampage facing off against Hong Kong Attitude from the LMS with 1907 Fenerbahce from the TCL and EU's Fnatic competing against their group counterparts throughout the day. So a lot of new names that we have not seen yet coming up in day 3 and day 4. And if it's been anything like these days, I'm ready for everything that I have prepped to be wrong because I thought Lion would get smashed. Now they're moving through. I thought Team One would get smashed. They came back with a tiebreaker. So I think what we've learned is it's pretty hard to predict exactly where these teams are going to stack up.
Yeah, any inter-regional competition, when you bring them all together, everything is out the window. A team that was super dominant in their region suddenly struggles to find the same advantages. A team that was all over the place in the region continues to be all over the place in these group draw stage. So it's super fun, and I think the thing that's going to be what I want to see is if the Pool 1 teams continue to be as dominant as they were in Group A and B so far.
Yeah, it's going to get our first look at Hong Kong Attitude. I think everyone's very curious about the third seed from LMS. Their first time that they will have a third seed attending the World Tournament, as well as as 1907 Fenerbahce and their new sub in Crash.
There is definitely a lot to see here, but for myself, the Cashers, and the entire live broadcast crew, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for more of Worlds 2017. Good night. First up, Team One Esports are going to hope to derail the Cloud9 hype train.
Yesterday, Cloud9 topped their group. Is it going to be the same today? Fallen in trouble, sub 100 health, and that's first blood for Jensen. Contract's in trouble, Mark. He wants it. Oh! No, he doesn't, and Cloud9 2-0 to start things off. You thought they looked good on day one. They look damn good starting off day two. Genthinks books his way in, and that's a rocket jump to follow him up. Grand entrance not exactly going to be enough as Mystic, WE, proving themselves the better team. 2 games now against Lion Gaming. Cataclysm comes down as Impact. They're just trying to get him out of the way. King free hitting in the backline, but it's just not enough. C9, so much damage. C9, it was more difficult this time, but they're now 4-0.
是一个 triple kill， 手下留人，手下留人，看一下，高点给了一个攻杀，They're
gonna give it over. The pentakill for White Lotus. Pentakill, penta emote, Lion Gaming. What a show! 35 minutes in, they take down Gambit Esports.
他只有5级，这个人没有大招，哇，最后被打了3下的一 triple kill。利若 WQ 打起了努努，努努是直接被击杀以后 ，Blessing 想要换掉 Mystic， 但没有机会，还可以 Q 闪，结果还有没有机会？一个一技能反杀了。
WE, their group stage performance will end with a perfect record. More damage coming through. Mark grabbing the kill on the King. Absolute stays alive, and it's a clean ace. Hope stays alive for the CB LOL representatives. Mark gets the kill on the Fantic. Now King's looking to fight these guys both. He drops 2. Only Chippy's remains. And the representatives from the CB LOL will move forward into the knockout stage.